Okay, I began my career at the Human G. Starks Youth Training School, YTS, in about 1974. And I worked there until I moved to Paso Robles as their head group supervisor, now called Chief of Security. And then I moved to the camp, uh, and I worked at the Oak Glen Youth Conservation Camp for about 5 years. From 1980 to about 1990, came down to open the S. Caraway Camp, which is now called the Ventura Camp here in Ventura in 90, and then came into the Ventura Youth Correctional Facility in 92 into the program here to run as a program administrator here.
So, how many years in total?
48 point, I think it's 6 or 7 now, months, so yes. When I started, the academy was 2 weeks up in Galt, and we didn't wear the equipment that we wear now. It was mostly our presence. I started with 2 old-timers on the intake unit, and they trained me primarily on how to make movements, take the count. Then I moved to what would be called a core program now, and work with the youth. And then I took a leave of absence and then came back as a senior. I worked on my teaching credential and received that, and I came back running one of the units as a senior youth counselor. And the names I'm going to probably be going back and forth because all of the names changed. I'd say by the time I moved to Paso Robles to the younger youth, I could start to see the department changing because we brought on the classification of the sergeants who worked in the comm center and made most of the movements. The assistant heads then, which are now called lieutenants, directed most of the operations. We were pretty much very interactive with the youth. We didn't have to deal too much with use of force. That comes later. We were able to speak, just use our presence most of the time, and we could get compliance from the youth. And the environments were youth-friendly. The youth training school had been the 2-story buildings with holding cells, but even then we were still interactive with the youth. But in Paso Robles, it was a single-story open dorm, very nice. The education system was wonderful, as it continues today. But really a lot more interaction with the youth, their families. We would have barbecues. We had the family coming in often. We went and interacted with the family. We had day passes. We'd go take the youth out, bring them back in. So then it changed as the years went on, as we head toward 2000, and incidents that we had, significant incidents, and then we began to wear more of the equipment. And then we had the lawsuit that comes in 2004, and then we began to see that we put a lot more structure in. There seemed to be a lot more division between the staff and the youth, even though a lot of us still maintain that relationship of being able to come in, talk with them, move them into the direction that we needed to move them in. The teachers continued to respond, to their needs. But we did more assessments because the lawsuit required assessments and making sure they were placed in the right program for all their needs to be met. We made a concerted effort to have the families come in more for the individual programs. The problem that we identified back when I initially came in, when we didn't have, like, the drug program wasn't large enough to provide all the services to all of the youth, maybe during their stay. We ended up with the IBTM making sure that all of the youth that were identified as needing that type of service would be placed in that program from the beginning. And we identified when we needed them to be placed in the program and then what they'd move to next. Program service day came in. We were able to track, that we were meeting their needs. They were getting their education. And then, of course, we had the lawsuit looking at their daily rights and wards' rights being met, and then their health and mental health became a top priority also. Even though we did that back in when I first began, I think it raised up to a higher priority as we came, and we made sure that we could track the type of services that were provided to the youth.
Right, and just to be clear, what we're talking about is changes that occurred here at DJJ, after the Farrell lawsuit.
Yes,
As a result of those.
yes. A lot more documentation. And sometimes that documentation and that establishment of a set program service day, even though it provided that structure, sometimes it separated us from the youth. And I want to say that it was both good and bad. For some of our staff, it worked out and it showed them how to work with the youth and better. For other staff, it just created a barrier, and we would see that. There were some staff that took to the training for delivering the daily curriculum, the daily group training, but for others, it would cause a barrier because they weren't that comfortable in delivering the content that they needed for the youth. When I came in, when you were given your youth that you were responsible for, like anywhere from about 8 to 10 on your caseload, you took care of them particularly. With the IBTM, you could be responsible for the entire 30 or 36 that were on the housing unit, and maybe miss out on that more intimate relationship that could happen between your 11, your 8, you're knowing their family, you're knowing their detail, and working with them daily and tracking them and see what's going wrong and having them to be able to come to you. It became they didn't have what they would call a caseload counselor. They had several, and sometimes they got lost in that. But then we have use of force, which came online, and I think that's a good thing. I think we needed to track how we were handling our youth when we had to deal with serious incidents going on. And we had to practice, and we had to learn to use our voices, to pay attention to what was really going on and what created the serious situations. And sometimes if we could be able to get in and stop something before it develops. And I think that's what made us think about it, because we debrief and talk about what went wrong and what we needed to do better the next time. And we debriefed all the way down to the YCO level. And that was good. That's a good thing. We could get their input. And also, we also had to do the corrective part, yes. But a lot of times we would get their input, and they began to learn what's a better approach to dealing with our youth that are assigned to us.
Well, it sounds like many of the changes, besides those being mandated, were really sort of organic as you decided, figured out what worked and what didn't.
Yes. And sometimes the criticism could make people uncomfortable, but if they really stopped and took a look at what the criticism was actually directing them to, then could understand that and get behind it, they could see there was a better way to do something. And that's why most of the time those staff that I supervise, I'd like to sit down and talk to them about what made them uncomfortable, what was a better way that they probably could have approached the situation, and then and remind them that these are young people and they're impulsive. And then we also have young staff that were impulsive too, and we had to get that together so we could balance it. And there were ways of, being successful with both of them. So, yeah, but it takes time. Coming straight out of the academy, you may not, function as well as you want to. But over time, if we could put you with an old timer or a good team that's running and kind of let you develop within that, you could become successful. So.
As DJJ begins to sunset, and these services are now going to be handled by counties, do you have advice for those counties on how they should move forward?
I know that they need to try to select the best candidate, really spend time in helping to understand what got the youth here, and then what are the best interventions. They have to understand that sometimes we are the surrogate parents, and balance that between the disciplinarian. They do need to learn skills, life skills, and how to work eventually, because they are going to go back in the community and they have to be successful. Education is important. And I'd say we just have to put the money into the daily skill building and training for both the youth and their staff. And I think they'll be successful. And make the environment, I don't want to say a fun environment, but one that they can interact in, a nice environment. Because we got technology now where, yes, we have to control some of it, but some of it helps us do things easier. And I'd like to see us utilize it more and be a little bit more trusting, but balance it. And I think it will be successful. Let's take a look at what's happening in the schools. Look at how bright and colorful the learning environment is. The same should be within where we keep our adolescents that have made decisions that have brought them to the correctional facility. But I think, and get the families in, because the families need to see them when they're successful, because they've certainly seen them when they've had their difficult times. And the psychologists help. Let me tell you, they do help. When we have good psychologists, they really get in. They're fearful at first of going in and talking about what's going on in their heads, but over time they inch there. And they do better when they can sit and talk with somebody that they trust and can offer them, a better way of approaching or a better way of thinking or solving a problem. Because problem solving is a very difficult thing for them. And as it is for a lot of us, but yeah, and in their young age. They rather be impulsive, make that mistake, and then come back, and maybe I can fix it later. So, yeah. They're going to have to look at all of that. They're adolescents, and we have the whole family. We have the family and the child, and so we're going to have to work with it that way, that approach.
Well, thank you. When you look back over your career, can you think of highlights or special events that stand out?
I'd say when I had the camp, the Oak Glen Fire Camp, I loved working with the crews there and watching the kids perform. The female crew that we developed here at Ventura, that was wonderful. The only one in the juvenile division. Get on the bus helped a great deal in bringing families throughout the state and coming here. We had small numbers, but they still worked with us to try to bring the families here to connect with their child. Let's see. Oh, we had Kiwanis joined us from the area, and so they taught them leadership skills. And so some of the kids really took to that. And the TWA program, which ended in about 2010, but leading up to that, most of the kids that were in that program ended up going out into the airline industry and did very well. Traveled all over the world, came back and visited us as we closed out the program, and were very successful, so I was proud of that. And then the last was when we put together the Freedom 100 program along with the Northern program, where we actually went back to having caseloads, and we had 6 youth that were assigned to a counselor. Every counselor had a caseload. We had a small population of 35, and 5 of them were mentors. And so I think that was the closest to going back to when I joined the agency. And they worked closely. They became, a little family. And those counselors that were in that program learned how to work with them. And we had very few incidents of a large disturbance on the unit. Most of the time, they could intervene. They knew when to intervene. They knew when there was an issue. We used the mentors, and I think that was a good relationship. I wish we could have expanded it out, but we went from October to July. The team received a Distinguished Service Award for that, and I was very proud of them for that. And the kids, almost all of them went home, and that was wonderful. So I'd say I've been through a lot of directors, supervised by a lot of superintendents, assistant superintendents, great people. I have enjoyed my career. I have nothing to complain about. I think I provided the best service I could to the department. I would recommend that young people that are interested in working with adolescents come to the agencies that work and bring their expertise, because it is needed.